set. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, October 13th, 2020 Board of County Commissioners Land Use and Public Hearing, virtually, online, and in person. Would you all please stand and join us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Ingalls, do we have certification of our agenda today?
We do, Mr. Chair. Items 2A and B do not require any specialized notice, but were properly noticed under the open meetings law. Item 3A required mailed, posted, and published notice, which was accomplished on September 17th, September 18th, and September 17th, respectively. Item 3B was properly noticed and continued from September 29th until today. And finally, item 3C required published notice, which was accomplished on October 8th, 2020. With that, you have proper notice and jurisdiction on all 5 items.
Thank you, sir. We do have a quorum, all 3 commissioners in attendance. I'll ask if any commissioner has any disclosures for any item on our agenda.
I have none, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And I have one, Mr. Chair, that I would love to share. So on an annual basis, as one commissioner, I always enjoy the opportunity to visit sick kids in the hospital, usually dressed up on Halloween. And oftentimes kids are unable to go out and trick or treat because of their hospitalization. And it's often fun to visit them and provide a little cheer. Unfortunately, as a result of COVID this year, no in-person visits in the hospital. So had an opportunity to actually provide full-size candy bars to kids that would write a note to other kids that could not trick or treat. And that was in Northwest Douglas County in the Sterling Ranch neighborhood. We do have a number of items today before us that are Sterling Ranch related, or where Sterling Ranch is the applicant. So I just wanted to make sure that was fully disclosed.
Very well. Thank you, Commissioner Layden. And I have none.
And just to be clear, is there any reason you can't consider those items on the merits, on the information presented today, and limited to the approval criteria?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Ingalls and Commissioner Layden. Moves us on to our land use agenda. 2A is the subdivision improvements agreement and intergovernmental agreement for Sterling Ranch, filing number 3B, project file DB 2020-055, and I believe we'll probably also hear from staff and maybe even the applicant at the same time for 2B, because it's related. Sterling Ranch filing 3B, project file SB 2020-003. And presenting for staff, Steve Coster.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Steve Coster for Planning Services. This is Sterling Ranch filing 3B, a final plat, and we will also be presenting the subdivision improvements agreement and intergovernmental agreement associated with this plat. Mark Kiefer with Sterling Ranch and David Kuntz with Martin & Martin are the project's representatives on behalf of Sterling Ranch LLC. There we go. The applicant proposes 194 residential lots, a super block lot, 16 tracts, and public roads on 74.54 acres. Those residential lots are all single-family detached residence lots. And a replat is currently in process for that super block lot, which is lot 195, which will be an additional 108 single-family attached residences that is being processed separately. The intent of a final plat process is to provide for the review of the final engineering plans, the subdivision improvements agreement, the public dedications, and other legal agreements. That plat process begins with submittal of an application following a review period by referral agencies and the public. Acceptance of the engineering plans, the request is considered by the board at a public meeting, as we're in today. This particular site is located in the southwest portion of the Sterling Ranch PD. It's approximately a quarter-mile east, of the intersection of Waterton Road and North Rampart Range Roads. You can see it here outlined in red. This is an aerial view of the property, a little closer in. The site is bounded by Willow Creek on the north and east sides, and undeveloped portions of Sterling Ranch farther to the east and north. West of this area is filing 3A, and that area is currently under construction. And you can also see on the south, single-family residential lots within Roxborough Village PD. So a little bit of background. This site was rezoned to planned development with approval of the Sterling Ranch PD and the associated water supply standard appeal back in 2013 by the Board of County Commissioners. In December of 2018, the board reviewed and approved preliminary plan 3, which consisted of 621 residential lots, a superblock lot, 39 tracks, and the necessary public roads and private drives. And this site is all a part of that preliminary plan. The final plat for the first phase of that, filing 3A, was reviewed and approved in June of 2019. So this slide shows an overview of the final plat. North is actually to the left on this slide. You can see the 194 residential lots laid out. You can also see in the center portion there, lot 195, which is the superblock lot that is undergoing the separate replat process. And the road running through here is an extension of the Waterton Road right-of-way that was already dedicated in filing 3A. The water supply for this final plat was reviewed at the time of the preliminary plan approval. Construction of the necessary pipeline is covered in several provisions of the associated IGA, SIA. And a couple of photos of the site. This was taken from the southeast corner and looking northwest across the site. And then this photo was looking northeast from the southwest, and you can see Willow Creek down at the bottom of that draw there, and that's the ongoing construction of Waterton Road there that you see. And here we see the approval standards that are applicable to a final plat. The water appeal approval standards also applied to this application, and a detailed assessment of a project's compliance with all of those approval criteria and standards is included in the staff report. Furthermore, all engineered plans, studies, and reports required for filing 3B have been reviewed and approved by engineering. Staff has evaluated the final plat in accordance with Article 5 of the subdivision resolution. Required improvements are identified and secured through the SIA-IGA. And would note that action on proposed condition number 1 is required prior to action on this final plat. Condition number 1 being, prior to the board's action on the final plat, the subdivision improvements agreement, intergovernmental agreement for filing 3B shall be approved by the board. Second, prior to recordation of the final plat, the applicant shall provide payment in the amount of $1,500 per single-family dwelling unit to the Douglas County School District for capital mitigation. For multifamily dwelling units within the plat, the applicant shall provide payment in the amount of $750 per unit to the Douglas County School District for capital mitigation prior to site improvement plan approval. The third condition is that prior to recordation of the final plat, the applicant shall provide payment to Douglas County for the pro rata share costs towards improvements to the state highway system in accordance with the commitments set forth in the Sterling Ranch PD. Fourth, prior to recordation of the final plat, the property within filing 3B shall be included into one or more of the Sterling Ranch metropolitan districts. Fifth, prior to recordation of the final plat, the private telecommunication easements shall be recorded and reception numbers noted on the final plat exhibit. 6, prior to recordation of the final plat, the secondary drainage and access easements within filing 3A shall be recorded and reception numbers noted on the final plat exhibit. 7th, prior to recordation of the final plat, technical corrections to the final plat exhibit shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And 8th, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representatives during the public meeting and are agreed to in writing and included in the public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners in approving the application. Therefore, such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's full satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. Section 504.06 of the subdivision resolution sets forth the parameters for the board's determination on final plat requests, as noted on this slide. And at this point, Deb Kula will provide a brief overview of the SIA-IGA that is accompanying the plat.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Deborah Kula with engineering staff. This SIA-IGA, the Subdivision Improvements Agreement, Intergovernmental Agreement for Sterling Ranch Filing 3B, is a 4-party agreement. It is very standard in nature, and these 4 parties have been participating in this agreement through the other filing, the plats within Sterling Ranch. They include the Sterling Ranch Development Company, Sterling Ranch Community Authority Board, Dominion Water and Sanitation District, and Douglas County. Next slide, please. This SIA-IGA is very standard in nature, as I noted, and it covers the roadway and traffic facilities, including sidewalks to be constructed, storm drainage facilities within the roadways, and private storm sewer for the cab parks, water and sanitary sewer infrastructure, landscape and park improvements, along with pipeline construction commitments. There is nothing special in regards to this SIA-IGA, and it is been thoroughly reviewed and vetted through engineering. Thank you, Steve.
So that concludes the staff presentation on the plat and the SIA-IGA. We do note that 2 motions are necessary from the board. First would be made for the SIA-IGA and followed by the motion on the final plat. So I'm available to take questions at this time, as is Deb. Otherwise, Sterling Ranch and its representatives are here to discuss the request as well.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Deborah. So any questions for staff at this time?
I have none, thank you.
I'll reserve my questions for the applicant's presentation.
Okay, very well. So no questions right now, Steve and Deborah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So at this time, I ask if, Steve, do you have a suggested order? Should the SIA-IGA would need to be addressed first in a motion? Would you recommend we hear from Mr. Kuntz first? Or I know you went first on item 2B. Which would you recommend, Mr. Kiefer or Mr. Kuntz?
I would say at this time we would hear from Mr. Kiefer.
Okay. Very well.
And he'll probably speak to both items.
Okay. And I believe Mr. Kiefer is on the line. And Mr. Kiefer, I know you know the routine. If you would state your name, spell of your last name, and your address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Mark Kiefer, Kieffer. I'm with the Sterling Ranch Development Company located at 8155 Piney River Avenue, Suite 200, Littleton, 80125. With me this afternoon, too, I have Cassie Slade from Fox Tuttle, our transportation engineer, David Kuntz, who has been introduced also. He's heading up our civil team with Martin and Martin. Also on the line here is Curtis Davidson, our land planner and landscape architect from PCS Consulting. Also, Eric Barney is joining us today as a resource. He is our chief engineer located at Sterling Ranch. And then last but not least, Mary Kay Pravosnik from Dominion, who'll be just giving you a little update on some of the water-related issues related to 18A. With that, I just want to acknowledge the staff and their leadership and commitments made again to this project as well as all of our projects. I'm always amazed at the professionalism and the ability to get things done, particularly in these trying times. And I would attribute that to the leadership of the commission. So I want to acknowledge all the commissioners for your leadership in these troubled times. And I'm hoping that we're all going to get through this very soon and with a lot of experience under our belt, I should say. So overall, I'd like to also just give an overview of where we are at right now in Sterling Ranch. It's been some time since I've met with the commission, but since we have talked last, we still have 8 active builders within our project, approximately 2,123 dwelling units platted right now, and out of that, about 675 units occupied. Out of those 675 units, that equates to about 2,300 to 2,500 new neighbors within Sterling Ranch that have been moving in every weekend. Just about, we'll see a moving van coming in and a new families moving into Sterling Ranch and getting acquainted with our area as well as Douglas County in general. Out of that overall development that we have going on currently, we have about approximately 335 acres of parks and open space and miles of trails already established within Sterling Ranch, including our brand new rec center that was just opened up about 2 weeks ago, actually. So that project now is complete, and we had just enough time to fill the pool for a weekend and then had to drain it for the season, but it is up and running right now as a rec center. Next slide, Steve. I just want to go through some of our goals and objectives that we started with in our visioning process within our PD. We are in compliance with the 2035 Comprehensive Master Plan. We are within a designated urban area, as so designated in the comp plan for the 2035 Master Plan. Sterling Ranch and this final plat supports the vision of providing for healthy communities as outlined in the Comprehensive Master Plan as well. It's evidenced by the amount of trails and other amenities that we have included for our residents, but also hopefully inviting our neighbors to participate in some of our trails and open space activities as well. Within 3B, we do provide a significant amount of open space, including passive open space. As you'll see if you come into Sterling Ranch right now on Titan Road, a large tract of what is referred to as Sterling Ranch, Sterling Gulch rather, a large open space area that basically establishes a natural drainage area that we're working towards preserving for the future. And then we also are working, as we have done from the very beginning, in consort with adjoining jurisdictions and service providers, including South Metro Fire, the Sheriff's Department, and other jurisdictions in the area. Next slide, Steve. The development concept, Steve had touched on briefly, but this is the second phase of, or the second half rather, of our preliminary plan 3 area in the southwest corner of our project. Its proximity to Roxborough Park is just to the immediate left of this area. That area that you see that is shaded out, that's our filing 3A portion. That also includes a large open space tract, or large park site, rather, I'm sorry. The areas to the north and west, north and east rather, are the Willow Creek open space areas that are preserved in what will be preserved in a natural state, including wildlife habitat, and an area that is pretty much restricted to most activity just in the our preservation of that particular area in our prairie preservation plan. The overall site itself has is bisected by Waterton Road. And again, for those who live in the area and those who have visited that area, you'll see Waterton Road starting to be bladed in right now from Rampart Range Road east and ultimately to the bridge crossing, which would be the far eastern side of this plat. That would be part of our commitment to building Waterton Road. As Steve had mentioned, this is 194 single-family units. We have approximately a half-mile regional trail that's being built on the perimeter of this. That would connect to the overall 1 mile loop, if you will, around the entire portion of the project, interspersed with various trails throughout the area. So the large loop around that, around both filings 3A and 3B, are areas that access other smaller trails throughout the filing. Within 3B, as I'll mention in the next slide, we have approximately 24 acres of open space, again tying into both active and passive uses. And next slide, Steve. This is a copy of the plat 3B that has been prepared by Martin & Martin. As I mentioned, it's 194 single-family units with one super block. The north is oriented towards the left of the screen here. Next slide. This is our neighborhood plan, and as I've mentioned in previous presentations, this is a requirement within our PD to define our land uses within each of these areas. This is the combination of both filing 3A and 3B. This is, as I mentioned, a unique aspect of our PED where we do outline the specific densities of each residential neighborhood, including in this particular area, a special character zone, which is in the lower portion of the project, the shaded area, that has additional restrictions for residential developments in that area as it abuts our neighbors to the south. Next slide. This is the park and open space component, which is part of that neighborhood submittal. As I mentioned, we have a large perimeter of open space, including a regional trail around both subdivisions 3A and 3B. You'll see sorry, I can't use the cursor, but there's a small esplanade, small trail corridor that runs through the middle of 3B, connecting our neighborhoods through that area to the larger oval-shaped park within 3A, to the western portion, or the eastern portion of Willow Creek, as Steve is using his cursor to indicate. Again, and I mentioned before, Willow Creek is a fairly unique and special area that's been described within our planned development. This is an area that is not being slated for any active recreational uses. It is an area that is being preserved for wildlife habitat and natural open lands and preservation. We are also working closely with Mile High Flood Control District in the development of a lighter touch, if you will, in terms of a regional drainage program. And certainly your staff, engineering particularly, is to be accommodated in terms of, or at least acknowledged, that they have been very helpful in the preservation and work that's being put together by Mile High, our engineers, and your staff. Next slide, please. So again, this is another description of the various types of open spaces that we have within the site. As I mentioned, it's all single-family detached. The regional trail that's outlined there. We have a pocket park that's located between our filings 3A and 3B. Local trails and then a fairly significant buffer setback area along Waterton Road for these single-family homes that we have in the area. Next slide. I just wanted to also point out how this particular project fits in the overall picture of Sterling Ranch in terms of roadways and connectivity. Waterton Road, which the Commission certainly is familiar with as members of the audience, this is the lower major arterial that runs through the entire length of Sterling Ranch. It connects to what is referred to here as the Southern Connector, but it's now called out as Waterton Road. So that road will connect both from Rampart Range, actually all the way through Douglas County, but from our portion of it, Rampart Range Road to Moore Road, and then ultimately the section that has been built by the county to Airport Road around Louviers. So a very, very significant roadway that's being completed, and the portion that the county has just recently completed from Moore Road to Airport is a beautiful roadway, if I may say so. It's a very well designed and can accommodate a lot of through traffic if needed, but I think it's a beautiful parkway as it exists today. That being said, this portion of filing 3B, which completes that lower quadrant or that lower portion of the project on the western edge of our site, pretty much sets the stage for that Waterton Road connection to be built all the way through. And I'm sure the commissioners are aware of our intergovernmental agreement that we have with the county in terms of providing for a partnership that gets that road built a lot quicker than what would have normally been anticipated. So from what I understand, bidding for the remaining portion of that Waterton Road stretch would start in January of this year, and the entire section from essentially the Willow Creek Bridge, which is the edge of filing 3B, all the way to Moore Road, potentially will begin, barring good weather or barring unforeseen circumstances, starting sometime in April of next year. So potentially seeing that whole connection from Waterton or from Rampart Road all the way to Airport Road within the next couple of years is something that is very realistic and hopefully happens fairly soon. Next slide, Steve. Just want to go through some of the design elements within Section 404 of the subdivision resolution. I'm sorry, in our zoning resolution. 3B does meet the character zone requirements outlined within our PD. That's one of the first boxes that's checked at any subdivision application. As Steve had mentioned, Sterling Ranch does have this provision within our PD that is vetted by the county staff prior to the submittal of any plat. Geotech conditions have been reviewed and specific procedural requirements have been found suitable for development. This was noted in the preliminary plan project, preliminary plan 3, that there are some geological issues here that have been thoroughly vetted by our engineers, and any builder that comes into the area would have to abide by. Open space buffers are provided adjacent to major drainage ways. This is particularly true with the Willow Creek drainage area, as I mentioned, a very special wildlife preservation area. And grading and drainage plans are complete and accepted by the engineering department. I think as Debbie had mentioned in her representation about the SIA-IGA, much of that leads to this particular approval process by engineering. Next slide, Steve. Filing 3B, and again, we're working as much as we can with the natural terrain. There are natural drainage areas, again, Willow Creek being the primary one. Within the grading protocols that we do have within the site, again, both from county ordinance as well as our own provisions and protections that are built in with our PD, we do have protocols established for any archaeological or historic resources that may be found in the process, essentially shutting down construction until an evaluation and an assessment can be made of any types of resource that might be uncovered in this area. I think it's pretty well known that there are portions of this area that may have certain archaeological resources that are certainly worth preserving. And then again, our signed construction documents and technical studies, including construction plans, traffic impact analysis, drainage report, erosion control reports have all been found acceptable by the engineering department and should be ready for approval. Next slide, Steve. And then finally, I just wanted to, before I turn this over to Mary Kay Provoznik from Dominion to answer any questions, this is a project, again, that we are working on building that bigger picture in terms of our water system that I think will be beneficial to all of northeastern Douglas County. But with that, Mary Kay, if I could get you up to the podium here, you can just make yourself available to answer any questions that the commissioners might have about the water supply as well as the wastewater treatment facility.
Sir, Mark, would you like me to just give an update on the pipeline and then be available for questions?
I think that'd be great for the benefit of the commissioners and the members of the public. I think that would be the best way. After introducing yourself.
This is Mary Kay Provoznik, Provaznik. I'm with Dominion Water and Sanitation District. My office is at 9250 East Castilla Avenue, Suite 210, Greenwood Village, Colorado 80112. Thank you, commissioners, for your time. I have good news. It's just been going that way for the construction of the pipe. All of the easements are secure. The pipeline has been constructed. The tank is under construction, expected to be completed mid next year. And we are working on the connections and ancillary facilities right now. So with that, we will have instant access to more than 2,000 acre feet of fully reusable water supply. As an update, just to put this in perspective, Sterling Ranch used 115 acre feet last year, and to date about 140 acre feet. So we are well ahead of the demands of Sterling Ranch. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Provoznik. After many years, hopefully got the pronunciation of your name correct. I just had to say that. Mr. Kiefer, do you have anything else to offer right now?
Yeah, that concludes our presentation. We'll just make ourselves available for any questions that you might have and any questions the members of the public might have as well.
All right, I'll bring it to the board for any questions for Mr. Kiefer or Mrs. Provoznik.
Thank you, Commissioner Layden. For Ms. Provoznik, I have one question about the pipeline construction. On page 8 of our packet, it talks about, that the pipeline will be completed no later than January 1st of 2022. Now, you've indicated that all the easements are obtained, the pipeline is completely installed, and the report says that you're working on some leak tests and making connections to Castle Rock and Cab. So can you tell us, will you meet that January 1st, 22 deadline? What's the rest of the story?
Thank you, Commissioner. The pipeline is in place. We currently have the connections left to do, and we're doing the leak testing. So should we need the pipeline to deliver in 2022, it would be ready. Right now, the demands are such that we are less than 200 acre feet, and that may not be the best operational water system to use, but we would be able to if it were necessary.
Great, thank you. And I have one question for Mr. Kiefer. Mark, I hear the term character zone over and over, and you referred to it in your presentation as an area that is basically a buffer up to another area that is not part of Sterling Ranch. So can you tell me exactly what that means by character zone?
Sure, that would be referred to as a special character zone. In this particular case, our PD describes that area and puts restrictions on residential building in that location that only allows for single-story ranch-like structures. There's also a setback between the adjoining neighbors to the south and our and the subdivision plat. So they'll can go back to those slides, Steve. I don't know if it's slide 4 or 5. I think it's the next one, perhaps. Actually, why don't we this one right here? So you'll see this green area as well. So that's an additional buffer that is in place based on that special character zone. Throughout the Sterling Ranch PD, there are these areas that are abutting some of our residential neighbors that do describe these additional restrictions that we place on those on our development to create some compatibility with our neighbors. And in that particular case, it was I'm trying to remember the exact width of it. I think it's in the previous slide there too, Steve. I'm sorry to keep letting you. The one previous that describes our neighborhood, that one, that shaded area right there, that's the depth of the special character zone where these restrictions are placed on single family story residences, and then an additional buffer, landscape buffer along that southern edge.
Thank you for that explanation, Mark. I have no further questions right now.
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions. Hello, Mr. Kiefer and Ms. Provoznik. Thank you for joining us today. In review of the packet, did have a couple of questions in a couple of areas. The first is with regard to the referral response we got from the Colorado Geological Survey. Can you provide a little additional information with regard to their comment about Plat Canyon number 1 and 2, the historic coal mine hoist shafts, and the potential subsidence hazard areas within the planned open space, and the grading response that you all provided?
Sure. So those were historic exploration pits that were made many years ago. We have been monitoring those locations. Part of the grading plan, and David Kuntz, our civil engineer, I don't know if you can weigh in on this particular discussion.
Mark, sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So addressing in the packet the response that we got from the Colorado Geological Survey with regard to some specific coal mine hoist shafts. And one of the comments was that the BRASCAP data indicated that these shafts have not been located or stabilized, and their recommendation that these shafts be located and stabilized to reduce abandoned mine-related hazards. You had a response. I was just hoping that you could provide some additional information with regard to that particular referral.
And
Yeah,
Mr. Kuntz, if I may interrupt you, sorry, since it's the first time you joined us, would you mind spelling your last name and your address for the record, please?
Yes, David Kuntz, Kuntz. Address is 12499 West Colfax Avenue, Lakewood, Colorado.
Thank you, sir.
So we did go out and make a field survey of those mine shafts. We located them. They're all on the east side of Willow Creek from this site, and they all appeared to be filled in. We put together an exhibit and along with some additional information and submitted that to staff as part of our response.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kuhns. So then I'll ask staff, Mr. Koster or perhaps Ms. Kula, who's on the line, if you can respond to the information Mr. Kuhns provided.
Steve, I'll have to defer to you on that one.
Okay. Because the sites were found to be on the east side of Willow Creek, outside of the bounds of this subdivision, we haven't required anything particular with them, and given that they've also made sure that they've been filled in. But it's something that I would anticipate more follow-up coming when we get to the east side of Willow Creek in the future with development.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Koster. So in the packet, the reference is to the comment that the mines were located and appear to be closed and abandoned, and that's staff's understanding?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then, Mr. Chair, I just had an additional question with regard to one of the HOAs that responded, the Roxborough Village First HOA. And in their correspondence in the packet, they talk pretty specifically about concerns related to the timing of Waterton Road, traffic congestion, the ability to evacuate in the event of an emergency, and street lighting. There was a really thorough response in the packet, which I certainly appreciated, but I'm wondering if the applicant can walk through, for the purposes of this hearing, the responses to those particular concerns.
Be happy to. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Please, Mr. Kiefer.
Sure. The first, Waterton, we believe that, as has been stated many times in many hearings, we believe Waterton Road is an important aspect of the overall transportation system in northeast Douglas County. I think that one of the concerns that had been raised is the county's participation in that road. Part of our response was that we recognize this also as a partnership with Douglas County, that this road does serve a much larger area than Sterling Ranch, and that our partnership with the county accelerates that road and its construction probably by about 5 or 6 years. So we agree that that Waterton Road is needed. It benefits residents of Roxborough. It certainly would add to the ability to evacuate that area in western Douglas County. Provides for more efficiency in terms of traffic congestion monitoring. Excuse me. And so we are very much part of that solution as well. Regarding streetlights, we're in the process of reevaluating our residential streetlight system. We've had several conversations with our community authority board and looking at our standards about lessening the number of streetlights within our projects, like filings 3A, 3B, and other filings outside of our town center area. All of our streetlights are dark sky compliant, although has been noted by several of our neighbors that the lighting right now is very obtrusive. In our response, we would have to say that probably any lighting out there of any magnitude is going to have a significant visual impact. But we are looking at ways to minimize light. I wouldn't say pollution, but trying to contain it and keep it to a minimal within our residential neighborhoods. We think that would be beneficial also to our neighbors. Once we start seeing the development of Sterling Ranch, particularly when homes are built, trees mature, we anticipate that a lot of what is perceived as excessive lighting out there is going to be minimized or buffered over time. But even so, what we are looking at are, again, lessening the number of streetlights, and then also looking at some additional controls within each one of our light fixtures that can allow for dimming and also light cycle types of switches. So the other concern too about emergency management and evacuation, we find that concern equally as important as our neighbors to the west. We do think that the advent of Waterton Road plus the improvements to Titan Road would be very beneficial to all of our residents and all of northwestern Douglas County in the event that a major catastrophe does happen and traffic can be routed through the area. I think one of the concerns had been on the condition of Titan Road, and in our response, I think that and I'm speculating here, but perhaps the time that referral was written, there was a lot of construction going on in the vicinity of Moore Road and Titan Road. Since that time, we have opened up that 4-lane parkway connecting all the way to the highway. We have signalized Roxborough Park Road and opened up that intersection considerably. So we think that we're working towards those improvements to, again, efficiently keep those areas as open as possible, and also working with the Division of Emergency Management, your staff, to ensure that there aren't any obstructions that are created by our project. One other final note about emergency management too, we are in the process of developing our own internal protocols for our residents, which hopefully dovetails with some of our neighbors as well. We've been in communication with the Sheriff's Department and Office of Emergency Management to make sure that those policies that we would like to put in place are compatible with what is already existing in Douglas County. We are relying, like our neighbors, on the professionalism and the expertise of emergency services to notify our whole area in the event of an evacuation. So again, part of our process is to make sure that that information is disseminated as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And remember, there was one other point there too, and I'm sorry I don't have that referral in front of me. Commissioner Layden, was there something else?
You know, those address the primary questions that I had, certainly, and I just want to clarify that as it stands, you have already stipulated to be dark skies compliant, and in fact are dark skies compliant. I think that's an important message that the public needs to hear, and it certainly was helpful to see that in the packet. And just to be clear, you've had ongoing conversations with emergency management, and it sounds like both the messaging and the infrastructure are part and parcel of that ongoing conversation about the need for evacuation.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kiefer.
No particular questions. I will just bring up, since Commissioner Layden referenced the Waterton extension. I think it's been about 4 to 6 weeks ago, we, the commissioners, had approved that. I want to make sure the listening audience knows that, approved that advancing of that road construction. And there is a payback from Sterling Ranch on that, with an interest on that, just to be be clear, but we, the commissioners, felt that was very important for multiple reasons to really make this project, not just in design, but actually into construction. And if I'm correct, I believe that construction start sometime next spring. I'm looking at nodding heads. I think it was next spring.
Yes.
Okay. The construction would actually begin on that. So thank you for bringing it up, Commissioner Lee.
Sure, Mr. Chair. And maybe for the listening audience, it'd be helpful to get a sense from staff how much the Southern Connector has been accelerated as a result of that IGA in terms of advancing the timing on that.
Deborah, would you be able to answer that? Are you aware?
I am not aware of how much Waterton Road has been advanced. You indicated the Southern Connector, Commissioner Layden. Did you mean Waterton Road?
I'm sorry, Waterton Road. I tend to conflate the two, but yes.
That's okay, I understand. No, I am not aware. Usually development occurs when roadways are constructed and widened and improved during subdivision, so the subdivisions would take time. So by doing this as one complete project has probably accelerated it by quite a bit of time.
We would estimate probably about 5 years.
Right. That was my understanding as well, is about 5 years. And certainly I think for the public, that's significant to know that will be established as a viable route for them much sooner than anticipated.
Well, thank you. No further questions for the applicant? And no further information provided from the applicant at this time, Mr. Kiefer?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, this time I'll open it up for anyone in the audience in the room or online. Would like to address the board regarding items number 2A and 2B. Seeing no one in the room come forward, I will ask Ms. Dunning if there is anyone on the phone, online.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have no hands raised.
Very well. This time we'll close public comment for items 2A and 2B. Bring it back to the board for any further questions, deliberations, and possibly a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to do a motion on the SIA-IGA if you're ready for one.
Very well. Please.
I have a motion to approve the subdivision improvements agreement and intergovernmental agreement for Sterling Ranch, filing number 3B-file project file DV 2020-055.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion passes. And I will ask Mr. Kiefer in advance of a possible motion coming forward on item 2B. There are 8 conditions of approval identified in the staff report. Would you, as the applicant's representative, agree with those 8 conditions of approval?
We would, yes.
Thank you, sir. So I'll bring it back to the board for any further questions, discussions, and/or motion.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to approve Sterling Ranch filing 3B with the 8 conditions as presented. Project file SB 2020-003.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Also, congratulations and thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Brings us to our public hearing, item 3A. This is Sterling Ranch Plan Development, Second Amendment, Project File ZR 2020-008. Presenting for staff, Steve Coster.
Yes, Commissioners, Steve Coster again for staff. The applicants have requested a continuance on this item, and the continuance is to the 27th of October.
And Mr. Coster, was there?
Sorry, at 2:30.
Okay, very well. Was there a particular reason for the request of a continuance?
The request is basically to give them more time to refine some of the commitments and notes in the PD, I believe.
Very well. Thank you, sir. And I will bring it to the board for a desired action.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion to continue Sterling Ranch Plan Develop Second Amendment Project File ZR 2020-008 until October 27th, 2020 at 2:30 p.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. That will be continued per the stated time. Brings us to item number 2B. This is 2200 Twilby Road, WZ Ranch, horse boarding use by special review. It's project file US 2020-002. Presenting for staff, Jamie Rice.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jamie Rice, representing Planning Services. WZ Ranch is requesting a use by special review for horse boarding and training and camping at 2200 Twilby Road. The project number is US 2020-002. Thomas Ellis is here on behalf of WZ Ranch. Additionally, I have given the Attorney's Office a letter that was received after the staff report was complete as extra correspondence. WZ Ranch is requesting approval of a USR for boarding of not more than 25 horses, training classes of not more than 20 classes per week, and camping of not more than 6 horse trailers as a part of the operation of the WZ Ranch facility. The intent of the USR process, as set forth in Section 21 of the zoning resolution, is to provide for uses in specific zoning districts that shall require a public notice and hearing and the approval of the Board of County Commissioners, subject to such conditions and safeguards as may be imposed by the board. The use by special review process begins with the submittal of an application. Following a review period by referral agencies and public notice is given for public hearings before the Planning Commission and Board of County Commissioners. The Planning Commission heard the request at its October 6th Planning Commission hearing. 2 neighbors spoke in support of the USR request. 1 commissioner did request the applicant clarify language within the management plan regarding camping units and other terminology. The applicants agreed to make the changes to the exhibit, which will be reviewed by staff. The Planning Commission recommended approval with 1 condition of the use by special review by a vote of 9-0. The site highlighted in blue is zoned Agricultural 1 and is located approximately 1.2 miles northeast of the intersection of Interstate 25 and Palmer Divide Road. Zooming in on the aerial, access occurs from a driveway off of Twilby Road. Existing horse facilities are located within the southeastern portion of the site, and the remaining open area is pasture for personal horse use. The Douglas County zoning resolution permits up to 14 training lessons per week and 4 boarded horses in the A1 zone district. A USR is required of the applicant as they exceed the number of client lessons and boarded horses per week, as well as the camping request. A USR horse boarding applicant also requires 20 gallons of water per day for each horse and a manure management plan. The applicant has a valid well permit to serve the use with adequate water for horses, and the applicant has provided a manure management plan. The USR exhibit shows a view of the entire USR permit area. Existing buildings on the property include an indoor riding arena, 3 barns, storage and loafing sheds, and a single-family dwelling unit. The dwelling is not included within the USR permit area and is not utilized by WZ Ranch staff. Client and staff parking is proposed on the north and east of the riding arena, accessible from the existing internal gravel driveway. In total, the USR permit area includes approximately 36 of the total 39-acre property. 4 pastures are proposed for personal use of horses and training. The only portion of the parcel not included in the USR permit area are the dwelling and surrounding grounds within the southeastern portion of the lot. In addition to the site plan layout, the USR regulations require that various operational details and limitations be set forth on the plan exhibit. The management plan addresses the items on this slide as described in detail within the staff report. These include number of sessions, clients and boarded horses, number of campers, hours of operations, number of employees, required outside storage, parking, and loading areas, permit requirements from other state and local agencies, method of providing fire protection, and manure management. Following our site photos, this is a view looking at the entrance of the ranch. The view is from Twilby Road looking south. This view is from the intersection of Twilby and Andrews Road looking southeast. This view looks at the ranch from Andrews Road facing west. This photo shows the living quarters horse trailer parking area facing west. This view looks into the site from just north of the residence, which is not included in the USR area. The approval standards for a USR request are set forth in Section 21 and listed on this slide. Staff's assessment of the approval standards is discussed in detail on pages 8 through 11 of the staff report. Staff has evaluated the use by special review request in accordance with Section 21 of the zoning resolution. Should the Board of County Commissioners find that the approval standards have been met, staff proposes the following conditions be included in the motion. Condition number 1, prior to final approval of the record copy of the USR plan exhibit, any necessary technical corrections shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. Section 2109.09 of the zoning resolution sets forth the parameters for the board's action for USR requests. And this concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to take any questions on the staff report. Otherwise, Tom Ellis is here on behalf of WZ Ranch.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions for staff at this time?
I would just like to clarify, Jamie, is there one condition or two?
There is one condition, which is the technical corrections condition.
Commissioner Thomas, I know she stated the Planning Commission had one condition of approval. I believe will usually be different because we have that second condition that we typically have.
Okay, I'm looking at page 11 of our packet, and it looks like to me it has two. That's why I just want to clarify that.
Yes, we do have two, but I know Jamie had mentioned the Planning Commission approved 9-0, I believe, with the one condition.
Correct.
Yes.
The Planning Commission did approve with the one condition.
And so today we have two conditions.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lady, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rice, thank you for your presentation. In the referral comments, the Douglas County Conservation District discussed recommending a stormwater plan and then providing a grazing schedule. The indication was that that comment had been forwarded to the applicant. Has there been any progress on that particular recommendation?
Regarding the grazing plan, which is usually required when a pasture is being used for those boarded horses to graze upon, in this case, the pasture is being used for their personal horses, so a grazing plan was not required.
Okay. And then what about the stormwater plan?
In terms of stormwater, I do believe that the applicants have looked at that comment, and Mr. Ellis can speak to that some more in terms of the stormwater management. I do know that there have been some additions to the site that have been added in terms of stopping a lot of the runoff and stormwater management in terms of that. I believe that Mr. Ellis would be a much better person to speak to that about.
Okay, I'll reserve my question until the applicant has presented.
Very well. No further questions for staff. Thank you, Jamie. This time, I ask if Mr. Ellis would like to address the board. Feel free to come to the lectern.
And Commissioners, while he's approaching, the additional correspondence identified by Ms. Rice was labeled Exhibit A and given to the board right at the start of this hearing. It's also been marked for the record.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Ellis, if you would state your name, spelling your last name, and your address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. My name, excuse me, is Tom Ellis. And the spelling of my last name, E-L-L-I-S. And I live at 2200 Twilby Road, Larkspur, Colorado, 80118.
Thank you, sir.
I'd also like to introduce my wife Phyllis, who's here with me. Same last name, Ellis, E-L-L-I-S. She helps me out running the place. So I'm sort of going to run through how we got started with this and then where we are, if that's okay with the commission. We appreciate you giving us the opportunity. I would like to thank Jamie Rice, Jeanette Baer, and Planning Services and Engineering. They really assisted us navigating the process and work on our way through this. We moved up from Texas about 5 years ago with the intent of starting this business. And we operate the ranch right now as a short-term horse boarding facility where we accommodate traveling horsemen. We also accommodate folks who are going on vacation and need a place to drop off their horses. Or in some instances, we have folks who are relocating to the area and need a place to put their horse while they're looking and/or upgrading their facilities in order to have their horses ready to move onto their own property. We currently don't have any full-time boarded horses, and that's the unique nature of our business. We're not a full-time horse boarding that does horse hotel work on the side. We really accommodate only traveling horsemen, and we don't have any full-time boarders. We are requesting the USR really to modify our operations based on needs of our customers and what they've asked us for, and that's why we're here. We can go to the definition slide. I wanted to provide a couple of definitions, mostly for folks who aren't as familiar with horse operations, equine operations, and horse boarding. First of all, the county defines a boarded horse as a horse that stays on the property for 24 hours at a time. Typically, the horse hotel boarded horses that we take on the property are not on the property for 24 hours. Usually it's about 10 or 12 hours. I'll describe that in a minute as we move through what a typical event looks like for us, or a horse boarded activity. We do consider, though, and have worked with staff to define, even though the horses don't stay for a 24-hour period, we are calling that a boarded horse. So, and we clarified that with staff. A board night is really one horse on the property for one night. That's how we measure our business. We run roughly 300 board nights a year, and as a business, to put that in perspective, one full-time boarded horse is 365 board nights, just to sort of give you a perspective of the density of our business. I wanted to point out living quarters horse trailer. We're going to talk a little bit about this in the camping aspect of our USR. A lot of people don't understand what a living quarters horse trailer is. We have a picture here. It's really the horses go in the back, usually in a slant load portion of the trailer, and then the front, it's very much like an RV. It has a sleeping facility, some kitchen facilities, self-contained water, and self-contained wastewater and sewage as well. Very similar to an RV. So kind of an RV in the front, horse trailer in the back. We can go to the next slide, please, Jamie. Our property's at the corner of Andrews Road, which is County Road 55. You'll be familiar with that if there's ever been traffic in the GAP project. You probably jumped off a County Line Road, took Andrews Dirt Road right past our property and kept on going to Greenland. That's where we're located. We're 15 miles south of Castle Rock, 20 miles north of Colorado Springs along the I-25 corridor. We're really 5 minutes from I-25, which puts us in a perfect spot for traveling horsemen who are traveling the I-25 corridor from Texas, New Mexico, Arizona on their way to Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, as well as South Dakota, and some folks going to Utah. We can go to the next slide. The property, location, and history a little bit. We really are located at the original homestead of the Alice Ranch. If you're familiar with the Alice Ranch and the Greenland Ranch, we were recently contacted by the Alice family who had some historical pictures that they discovered, and we went around and took pictures of our current facilities and the facilities back in that area for them, and they were pretty excited to see what had happened now with where the homestead had been in the past. We're the only horse hotel between Pueblo and Longmont along the I-25 corridor, which is kind of important for folks who are moving back and forth up the corridor. The Douglas County Fairgrounds used to take overnight horse boarders. However, they don't do that anymore and actually refer everybody to us. So right away, you can see a 4-horse board limitation is pressuring us a little bit. We are getting a little more interest in horse boarding there. If we could go to the next slide, thank you. 5 other residents in the quad, and within this quad, surrounding us, the Colorado Baptist Convention owns the land to the north, east, and south of the quad. Harmony Land and Cattle is our neighbor to the west, and we work frequently with their Greenland foreman and their ranch hands there in the area. And all of that land is conservancy land. The neighbors that we have, Sharkeys and Gosners to our east. The Gosners have a few cattle on their property. Mr. McCarthy, the Smiths and Kennys to our northwest, and the Kennys have a couple of horses on their property. An aerial of our actually this is an aerial of our place. All the traffic that comes onto our property accesses the first 1,000 feet of Twilby Road and then turns right onto our driveway, which you can see, which is also hard packed road base. The first 1,000 feet section, 1,000-foot section of Twilby was improved by the previous owner. It was widened and improved for the traffic that she was having come on the property, and it was Front Range Equine Rescue at that time. If we could go to the next slide. So typically, and one more please, Jamie, thanks. Typically what happens on a visit is a tow vehicle shows up with a horse trailer or a living quarters horse trailer. So a regular horse trailer just puts the horses in, and there's a dressing room in the front. We review all guest horses' health paperwork. We don't let any horses on the property that haven't got a valid health certificate, as well as a current Coggins, which is an infectious disease amongst horses. After we've reviewed that, we offload the horses into their accommodations and set up their water and hay or feed or whatever the owners have at that time. The guests park their trailer in parking and head to a hotel or now they've asked, can they camp the night on the property in their living quarters horse trailer? People really like to stay with their horses. So that's one of the reasons that we're here, to talk a little bit about that. The next morning, they usually show up not long after sunset. I would say 8 o'clock is late for most folks. Some sleep into 9. They pick up their horse and they take off for the rest of their travels. So it's really kind of drop off the horse in the evening. The horse stays with us. We take care of him overnight. They pick him up and move on. We can go to the next slide. Talk a little bit about our management plan. So we're requesting via the special review to board no more than 25 horses at one time. So one of the reasons that we're asking for that is really for a surge. We've had polo competitors from the Texas area who are going to Sheridan, Wyoming or Canada have come through and asked if they can stop. They have 10, 12 horses in a trailer. We have horse haulers that have more horses. I recently, 2 weeks ago, got a call from someone who runs a horse show barn, and they wanted to stop by with 15 horses. So if we have 2 of those folks wanting to stop by at the same time, we get to our 25 a night. And that's why we're asking for that number. Typically, the folks who arrive 2 to 4 horses in a trailer, and that's about the normal size. And so the normal cycle is 2 horses show up, or 3 horses or 4 horses in a trailer. But this 25 horses at one time really helps us cover any surge that might happen, particularly when Douglas County Fair is going on, National Western Stock Show. We get a lot of rodeo competitors coming through, as well as the National High School Rodeo Association, the junior high, and those rodeos are typically in Wyoming, and the families come through with their horses. Our expected business volume really is approximately 300 board nights a year. I mentioned that before. Remember that 2 to 4 horses come in one trailer. So that traffic density is generally about 100 tow vehicles with trailer visits per year. We do have business operations that are other agricultural activities, 6 horsemanship training clinics a year, 2 horse shows. By the way, we haven't got to that level yet. We're certainly hoping to get there at one point, but that's 20 horses, or 10 horses and 20 horses respectively, which would equate to an additional 100 trailer and tow vehicle visits per year. Lessons are usually in conjunction with horse training clinics. We don't have currently a trainer on the property that gives horsemanship lessons, but because one of those folks who came up from Arizona, he asked to do private lessons as well as a clinic. He wanted to do 10 lessons a day, which would have put us at 20 and over the 14 for the week. So because of that particular horse trainer, we've asked in the USR to go to 20 lessons in a week. Our business volume, really, we've derived that from 3 years of data of operating where we are now, as well as a marketing analysis that Blakely & Company did for us, Blakely & Company from Colorado Springs. Let me go to the next slide, please. Just to kind of put the business in perspective, the average rate for an overnight boarded horse in the United States as well as in Colorado is $25 per night. So that's what essentially our revenue is from one horse boarded is $25. Customers that come on the property, we have a business arrangement with the Monument Fairfield Inn and Suites Hotel for accommodations so that they can get discounted rates to stay there. Also, we refer them to the Colorado Heights RV Resort. You may be familiar with that on Monument Hill for the dumping of their wastewater or sewer self-contained tanks. I will talk a little bit about the stormwater. That completes my presentation. Part of the natural resources comment was for the pastures that would be utilized for boarded horses, stormwater, as well as a pasture management plan. We had already previously addressed excessive runoff on the property by managing with an excavator how the water moves. We have a series of wattles, hay bales, and also some use of recycled asphalt to make sure that we keep the water from over eroding the property. In the pastures, there are existing, what we call them in Texas, stock tanks, large areas that collect water running off from the hillside during the snow melt that created in the past, during the Alice Ranch days, water for livestock. Now they don't accumulate any water because the actual water runoff has shifted slightly over the years, so they get damp, but they actually don't fill with water. I was going to mention something else. We did appreciate the National Resources comments and review. They gave us actually a good example of a pasture management and rotation plan, and we actually adopted that for our personal horses, and we use that now because it was so effective, and they had done a good study of each of our 4 pastures. So the entire review process and all of the organizations and institutions that reviewed really assisted us with their comments. Light of Water did an in-depth analysis and said that, in fact, if we had full capacity at 25 horses a day for 365 days a year, we would only use 0.56 acre-feet of water, which is well within the limits and requirements, and actually would meet any water requirement we would have with 300 board nights and/or if we got bigger than that, which would certainly be beneficial to us if we got bigger than 300 board nights. But that concludes my presentation. Of course, any questions?
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Questions for Mr. Ellis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ellis, for your presentation. Certainly an exciting endeavor, and appreciate the specificity that you went into in terms of providing us the detail there. I'm looking at the referral comments from Larkspur Fire Department, and there were 3 different recommended actions in terms of the site plan, and that's from their letter on July 14th of this year. It indicated in our packet that you met with them on the 5th of August and that an action plan was developed in compliance with the recommendations from Larkspur Fire. Can you give us an update in terms of where you're at on those
Yes, sir,
action items?
absolutely.
Okay.
First, Larkspur Fire came out to the site on that date and looked at all of the access, our driveway roads, the turnaround by the barns, actually in the permit area, the turnaround up by the house, and found all of it to be adequate for the transport and/or maneuvering of all emergency services vehicles that would come on the property, including the water tanker or tender, which was the heaviest that they mentioned in their comments to us. And he was very, the Larkspur Fire Marshal was very pleased with our road structure set up and everything else. We went into each of the public access buildings. We reviewed those access buildings, our fire extinguishers. He asked us to put up exit signs on all the exits for those public buildings, as well as lighted exit sign with an emergency 90-minute battery that would light the exit sign as well as the area inside the barn. We complied with all of those. The fire extinguishers had to be inspected by an inspection company. We benefited from that actually and found out that they had been recalled, and Kidd Fire extinguisher company sent us all brand new fire extinguishers, which we hung adequately. We benefited greatly from that. And so he came back out again, and the date is escaping me, reviewed everything, said we met all of his requirements, filled out a sheet of paper, provided it to us, and we've provided it to staff as well, that all the requirements from Larkspur Fire were met.
Well, that's wonderful, Mr. Ellis. And Ms. Rice, can you confirm that letter was received by staff?
Correct, it was.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
So this is Douglas County, and we are always pleased when entrepreneurs and capitalists find a way to provide a service for customers who need one. So when I was reading this packet, I used to own horses, and I never realized that there was a need like this. So congratulations on finding a need and filling that for your customers. Have you been provided with Exhibit A, an email from James Nelson?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if you can give us some answers to some of his questions.
Certainly. Which questions would you like answered?
Well, why don't we start with who's going to police this?
He had several.
He has several. Let's start with who's going to police this.
Okay. So the limitations on us from the county, as I understand it, are 25 horses, 20 lessons in a week, and 6 people who will be camping. So right now, our business doesn't reach that level. We will not violate that. I'm not sure who polices that, but certainly as a businessman with integrity in compliance with the county, we're going to maintain those numbers. That's why we're here asking for it, so that we can meet the needs of our customers.
Well, as you started talking, it was clear to me that you could have been answering these people on the phone who were calling you in need and saying, come on in with your horses. But you didn't do that. You came to the county and went through this probably cumbersome process with help from staff so that you could be legal. And I would just like to put on the record that we received this exhibit and have asked you about it. I'm sure you would love your business to be 1,000 trips per year and what he's listed here. But when you start a business, you don't have full capacity all the time right away. And so I just want to put on the record that I've asked you these questions. Was there anything else about this email that you would like to respond on the record?
We will probably have, at the highest level, roughly 200 tow vehicles and trailers a year. That's what we anticipate based on everything we've looked at. The first 1,000 feet of Twilby Road is the only part of Twilby Road that those folks will be traveling. Currently, that's a volunteer effort by first myself and now Mr. Sharkey and some of the other neighbors to maintain it both winter and summer. We plow it, we grade it, we make sure that it's in good shape. And we've been actively doing that. Mr. Nelson does not live on Twilby Road yet. He just purchased property there. So he hasn't been able to experience a year's worth of maintenance on the road and what all the neighbors do for each other in the neighborhood, I'm confident that the washboarding that he mentions, which is extremely minimal at this point, due to Mr. Sharkey's efforts, will be maintained and won't be a problem at all. It's actually more dry weather, and when he starts, when he starts construction on his place, we'll probably have a lot more traffic than generated from our business, and that will go beyond the first 1,000 feet into the rest of Toiber Road in front of the other neighbors. But that's my best answer for all of those.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Yes, ma'am.
My next question is for staff, and I don't know if it's for Jamie or someone else. On page 282, at 282 in the packet is a letter from Al Peterson, and he writes that Andrews and Twilby roads are private roads. I thought Andrews Road was a county road. Is that not correct?
Can I answer that one?
Afternoon, Commissioners. This is Al Peterson with engineering staff.
Yes, Al.
Yeah, I was mistaken. It doesn't have any true county right-of-way in association with Andrews Road. It's a prescriptive right-of-way that we do maintain. So Mr. Ellis is correct. It is a county road.
Okay. Thank you. The voice from above that belongs to Al Peterson. Thank you. When I read that, I thought that was a county road. So thank you for clarifying that. I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Very well, thank you, Commissioners. And I would, first of all, if you have minimal washboarding this year with the minimal amount of rain we have, I commend you. You're doing a great job. I would like to just have staff address, we received that letter from Mr. Nelson, but as I read through this, what is really taken care of, the onus is put on the county, and I think what we have with a management plan, not just a manure management plan, but Jamie, I know you addressed it in your presentation, but would you just refer to that management plan again? Because we are not heavy-handed. We are not looking for problems. If there's a complaint, we certainly follow up with it. But wanted the audience to certainly know there is a process called the management plan.
I'm sorry, would you like me to clarify what's in the management plan, or?
Yes, and maybe just go through the slide you had on the management plan too, and just list those 6 or 8 items that it covers. And
Sure. I'm actually going to share the exhibit. And it'll show within this management plan right here. We'll see that they address business operations in terms of their numbers of boarded horses and camping units, as well as their hours of operation, their employees. The management plan, again, includes the number of boarded horses, what they are providing to those boarded horses in terms of water, and what their well permit number is and what that allows for within their well permit. They have gotten into camping and the specificities of the camping units and how many overnight stays they anticipate per year. They also address traffic, parking, and access. They've included their traffic density estimates, as well as pointed out where the parking and access is within the property. Their manure management plan is included in that as well. They have included their methods of manure management and included that no manure will be stored on the property longer than 2 days, in addition to them trying to spread it out into their own pastures. They've included other agricultural activities that may be included in terms of horse training, horse shows, and clinics. They have included the site maintenance and some definitions, and that is what is included in the management plan. And to clarify a little bit more here on the site maintenance, there is an annual USR inspection that is required for all use by special review. So as soon as this is approved, it will be inspected again annually.
Thank you, Jamie. Mr. Ellis, would you like to make any further comment to that?
No, sir, unless, I will mention that we did list 2 part-time employees. We don't have any employees right now, just Phyllis and I and my daughter run the place, but we hope to grow that big that we might need to have a couple of employees, so we put it in there. Just we do operate from 8 to 8, that's what it says, but we frequently take requests later than that. Many people get delayed on the road, trailer problems, truck problems, and we essentially stay open 24 hours for folks that stop with their horses because they really have no other alternative once they get north of Pueblo.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Appreciate it.
I guess that's what you mean when you introduced your wife and said that she helps you out.
She does.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open it up for anyone in the audience like to address the board regarding this application, and would also entertain anyone online. We have someone in the room, so Ms. Dunning, if you would just wait a moment, I'll ask you. But good afternoon, sir. If you'd like to, if you would, state your name, spell your last name, and address for the record.
My name is Tom Sharkey, Sharkey. I am the adjacent neighbor to the Ellises. My wife, Ann, is right there. We are in full support of the USR. We share a 1,318-foot property line. Our master bedroom overlooks their barns. We are the closest neighbor that can possibly hear anything. I'm a licensed general contractor in 30-plus states, as well as cattle rancher in Elbert County. I would like to respond to some of the items on the opposition letter. And Tom has covered a lot of this, but the Ellis's driveway is the first driveway in on Twillby Road. So the traffic is confined to their frontage. It doesn't go past their frontage, doesn't go past the property line. I do all the heavy maintenance on the road. I grade it. I move the big snow. My neighbors move the small snow, but I bring a full-size loader in the wintertime as needed. I bring a 140 horsepower farm tractor from my ranch with a box blade to blade the road. The road is in way better condition than Andrews. In terms of washboarding, it is a function of the drought. Neither of the neighbors that have commented in opposition to this have ever approached me, offered to help me with any money, and I've been doing this for 18 years. One of the neighbors has been there longer than me. I've done things for him. He has never thanked me. So the opposition is kind of a red herring, I guess you would call it. The one neighbor's letter, he has never responded to any of the neighbors. He's known our little group out there and has never come and asked about anything going on. We met him about 3 weeks ago for the first time. So he has never lived out there. He's rarely out there. He's supposedly going to build a house out there. Andrews Road, Douglas County 55, sees far more traffic in 1 hour from the I-25 gap project when there's a wreck than we've ever seen from the Ellises in the whole time they've been there. The facts and figures that are included in the opposition letter are not based on any reality that can be attested to by the neighbors who actually live on Twillby Road. The Ellises have always been incredibly respectful in their operations, and most of the time we don't even realize they have a guest. There is no noise or traffic as indicated in the letter of opposition. In conclusion, the Ellises have been model neighbors whom everyone would love to have. As the only neighbor that is somewhat close proximity to the Ellises, we are fully in support and have no opposition to the request for change of use. We strongly encourage the county commissioners to fully endorse this traditional Western amenity for Douglas County.
Thank you, Mr. Sharkey. I know you mentioned you're a direct neighbor. I didn't hear an address, but I would imagine it's Twilby also.
2320 Twilby Road.
Thank you, sir.
We're immediately to the east.
Very well.
Do
Thank
you
you.
have any questions?
We'll address the questions at the end of testimony. Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the room would like to address the board? Seeing no one, I'll ask Ms. Dunning if there's anyone online.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do have Bill Kenny on the line. Sir, you are unmuted and live. Go ahead.
And Mr. Kenny, if you would state your name, spell of your...
Bill Kenny, Kenny. I live at 2381 Twilby Road. I'm a neighbor, live to the northeast of WZ Ranch. And I'd just like to add my full support to WZ Ranch's application. And also fully agree with Tom Sharkey's comments, very clear. We assist in maintaining Twilby Road and have for the past 10 years. Mr. Sharkey does the heavy work during those bad blizzards, as well as keeping the road smooth most of the time. Our other neighbors and myself do a little bit of that help. We don't have the heavy duty stuff, but we do have our ATVs and snow plows when the drifts get real bad, and we're all out there helping each other out. Our neighborhood is very close to each other. Everyone except one fully supports WZ Ranch, and we get along very, very closely and very well with each other. And I'd just like to send the support and firm our support. I've talked to all the neighbors except one just this past weekend, and we all are fully behind Tom and Phyllis for their application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Anyone else, Ms. Dunning?
I have no other hands raised, sir.
Very well. This time we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. I don't recall any particular questions in public testimony for Mr. Ellis to address. Mr. Ellis, would you like to address the board for anything further in what you heard in public comment? Very well. And Mr. Ellis, I'm just going to ask you before we move on to any further questions or deliberations, there were 2 conditions of approval presented in the staff report. Are you in agreement with those 2 conditions?
Sir, we are. As a matter of fact, other than the technical conditions that may arise, all of those have already been addressed in a rewrite of the site exhibit and delivery to staff.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
We've already addressed them, and we provided, I think, at 7:30, 8 o'clock this morning, an updated site exhibit that addressed all of it.
Very well. Thank you, sir. And bring it back to the board for, you bet, for any further questions or comments.
I'm just going to take this opportunity to just comment that we often have these kind of questions come before us, and we have half the room that won't look at the other half of the room. And they're mad at each other, and they get up to the podium, and they say these people said this and those people said that. And it's really a pleasure to have people here supporting this. And just, I like the words you used, traditional Western. I missed the third word. Amenity. I love that. And I just want to tell you that as one commissioner, I'm really thankful that there are people here supporting their neighbors, and that you talked about how you get along and help each other, because that's how it used to be. And so I appreciate what you're demonstrating here, so thank you.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll just echo those sentiments that it is incredibly refreshing to see really model citizens and a model applicant that has communicated with his neighbors, worked incredibly well with the county, and taking the time to be with us today. So thank you for your time, and we certainly appreciate all the individuals on the phone that shared their comments as well.
Mr. Miselis, thank you for bringing this forward. It certainly is a service that's very obvious. As we know during our fair and really a lot during the stock show, that's always a challenge. Having livestock myself, but I can understand that. My livestock's fortunate. They don't travel, but if they did, I think they would be happy at your place, is what I understand. And I would say, Mr. Ellis and Mr. Sharkey, if any of you desire to move, I'll be happy to provide you my address. I'd love to have you as a neighbor. Wonderful job, I think. What the criteria presented to us, I believe all criteria has been met. I'll bring it to the board for any motion.
There's no further discussion. Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve 2200 Twilby Road, WZ Ranch, horseboarding use by special review with the 2 conditions as presented. Project file US 2020-002.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you for bringing this forward, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
I just want to commend staff. We hear that often from applicants about the approach with staff, and the goal of staff is to make sure any applicant is aware of all issues arising, and it's nice to hear the comments from applicants that we do. So staff, we really appreciate the efforts you do, and you do great work. You do all that we ask you to.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That's for all the staff. That's even the next staff person that will present to us for our next item on the agenda. This is a resolution supplementing the 2020 adopted budget to appropriate unanticipated revenues and appropriate assigned and unassigned fund balances in the amount of, I'm going to say this correctly, $48,345,251 presenting for staff. Budget Manager Kim Hirsch.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
It sure is.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kim Hirsch for the budget team. I would like to formally present to you the third supplemental for fiscal year 2020. The total amount for your request for consideration is $48,345,251. More specifically, this supplemental will be increasing appropriations for new revenues that have been received since the formal budget adoption, allow for unspent grant and project dollars to be carried forward into the current fiscal year, and appropriate fund balance for new initiatives that have risen since January 1st. I'm going to quickly go through some of the larger requests by fund, but I'll be happy to answer some of your questions if you have any at the end of the presentation. The general fund is $32,374,070. Of this amount, approximately $32.3 million are for new revenues for which spending authority needs to be appropriated prior to the funds being spent. The largest of these revenues is $30.1 million received from the Department of Local Affairs, in which Douglas County can submit eligible expenses related to the compliance with COVID-19 related public health measures. Also, a transfer from the Justice Center Sales and Use Tax Fund in the amount of $607,020 is being requested at this time to offset the cost associated with the Fourth Amendment between Taser International and Douglas County related to Senate Bill 217. This will allow Douglas County to purchase additional body cameras and enable the replacement of all tasers currently in use over at the Sheriff's Office. For brevity, I'm just going to go quickly through the funds that have new revenues that need to be recognized with the like amount of expenditures. So therefore, there's no additional use of fund balance being requested at this time. These are the Road and Bridge Fund for $1,133,416. The Developmental Disabilities Fund, $100,000. The Road Sales and Use Tax Fund, $527,897. And the Lincoln Station Local Improvement District for $30,000. The Law Enforcement Authority Fund is requesting $4,925 of assigned fund balance. It is associated with the cost, again, related to Senate Bill 217 that I addressed earlier. The School Safety and Security Fund, a total of $10,372,619 of assigned fund balance is being requested in order to carry forward the unused portion of the funds that were dedicated by the Board of County Commissioners in May of 2019 for one-time funding for physical entryway security technology and mental health services for children in Douglas County schools, as well as the placement of additional school resource officers. $69,463 of new revenues have been received from North Star Academy as part of the cost-sharing agreement with North Star to place a school resource officer in the school for fiscal year 2021. The total request for the School Safety and Security Fund is $10,442,082. The Justice Center Sales and Use Tax Fund, again, has a request of $607,020 of assigned fund balance to complete a transfer over to the general fund to offset the costs associated with the purchase of the body cameras and the tasers for Senate Bill 2017. This is the governmental accounting come into effect here. The Open Space Sales and Use Tax Fund, $1 million of assigned fund balance is needed to complete the purchase of a conservation easement on Dittmer's Ranch. This easement will be held by the Douglas County Land Conservancy and was previously approved by the Board of County Commissioners on August 11th, 2020. $917,000 of fund balance is being transferred over in the Park Sales and Use Tax Fund to the Conservation Trust Fund at this time. 2 deposits received in late December 2019 were inadvertently deposited into the incorrect fund, and this request will move the fund to offset the cost of the East-West Regional Trail in the Conservation Trust Fund. The Conservation Trust Fund, in order for the funds to be spent that I just spoke about, they need spending authority, and this will be recognizing the transfer in of $917 as revenues, and all dollars will be spent on the final construction of the East-West Regional Trail. An additional $100,000 of assigned fund balance is also being requested to offset the cost associated with an 8-foot trail from Park Meadows Drive to an existing South Suburban Park and Recreations District trail. This is a joint partnership with the City of Lone Tree and the South Suburban Parks and Rec. The Solid Waste Disposal Fund, $175,000 of assigned fund balance is being requested to provide additional spending authority for the recycling events that were held June through August of this year. A few more events are planned for this fall, so enough fund balance is being requested at this time to ensure all additional needs are covered. And finally, the Rocky Mountain HIDA Fund is decreasing expenditures by $66,159 due to grant modifications that have been received since budget adoption. Again, the supplemental I'm requesting is $48,345,251,000. This will bring the Douglas County new amended budget to $526,954,974, which is a 13.8% increase from the 2020 adopted budget. With that, I conclude my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Kim, great job as always. And just so the audience knows, this was not the first presentation the commissioners on this. We had a work session and in great detail, questions answered. And wonderful presentation by Kim then and again now. So Kim, you do a great job with the complicated government accounting process that we are required to go through. It's really interesting to look at all these different funds, and these are not all the funds.
No.
But it's just, I always consider everyone as a different checking account, and we really don't have that ability to start messing with the dollars in each to adjust for one, as you very well mentioned in the conservation fund. Right. So thank you for finding that and making that correction.
Thank you.
Questions for Kim?
Not so much a question as a comment that we're talking about 48 million additional dollars for spending authority, basically.
Yes.
And that there's 32 million into the general fund, and a majority of that is from the CARES funding. And that will go to help our citizens and our businesses, in part, to keep them healthy and their customers healthy. And then the $10 million for the School Safety and Security Fund. And so a lot of the money that we are spending here is based on priorities of our citizens to keep them safe.
Most definitely. The board has made a commitment to the citizens of Douglas County, and I think those 2 points that you just mentioned brings to the forefront of your goals with the Douglas County citizens.
So thank you, Kim, for this.
Well, I would just add that for the Board of County Commissioners, no doubt having a budget of over $500 million is a significant responsibility. And for the three of us, our core priorities around public safety, health and human services, historic and natural resources, economic foundations, county services, and transportation could not be accomplished without the incredible work of budget and finance, really accounting to the penny for every dollar that is spent. So thank you for helping the entire county accomplish these core priorities. We really appreciate you.
Very well. At the risk of Kim not being able to sleep, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion to approve a resolution supplementing the 2020 adopted budget to appropriate unanticipated revenues and appropriate assigned and unassigned fund balances in the amount of $48,345,251.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor, state aye.
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 Thank
Kim,
you.
you can rest well.
Yeah, until Thursday, right?
Good job. Thank you.
I got the email, and I just responded, yeah, thank you.
All right. That concludes all items on our agenda. We are adjourned.